Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right in and opening a direct window into the past to meet a truly remarkable figure. We're traveling all the way back to the year 1834. Picture sitting beside Dorothea Spangler, an 86-year-old matriarch speaking to us right from her fireside in York, Pennsylvania. Now, what we have here isn't some dry, dusty historical record. Not at all. It's a vibrant, deeply personal memoir where Dorothea reflects on a massive life full of joy, hardship, and just profound resilience. So get ready because her story is incredibly captivating. Okay, let's dive into this. Dorothea's own words tell you exactly who she is right out of the gate. At 86 years old, she actually sat down for an entire afternoon, literally writing until her hand ached for 2 days afterward, just so she could write her own last will and testament. And she wrote it in German, the language of her childhood. Now, this wasn't just administrative paperwork. It was a fierce declaration of independence. She firmly believed a woman ought to have the absolute last word on her own legacy, completely avoiding the easy route of having someone else do it for her. So that leads us to Section 1, A Woman's Last Word. We're framing this as an intimate fireside chat, where Dorothea gathers her grandchildren to pass down the unvarnished, unpolished truth of her life. Next up is Section 2, Across the Ocean to York. Here, we shift to her origins in Strasbourg, which was this fascinating borderland where French and German cultures deeply intertwined. Look at the sheer concentration of life-altering events on this timeline. Her parents married in 1735, she was born right around 1748, and then tragedy struck early. Her father died in 1755 when she was just 7 years old. Sometime after that, her widowed mother, Ursula, made an incredibly daring choice. She actually brought all 6 of her children across a perilous, disease-ridden ocean to America. Dorothea points out that she couldn't fully appreciate this terrifying feat until she became a mother herself. She realized how hard it is just to take a bumpy carriage ride with kids, let alone survive a massive wooden ship crossing the Atlantic. Once they safely reached York, Pennsylvania, they settled among other German and French Alsatian immigrants. Dorothea was raised in a household dominated by strong women, basically her mother and her sisters, and they were heavily steeped in the German Reformed faith. So she learned to read, write, run a home, and perfectly recite her catechism. But beyond all that, she developed into a really lively girl. She was quick to laugh, and man, was she quick to argue a point she believed in. Actually, her mother warned her that this specific trait would either serve her brilliantly or land her in a ton of trouble, depending entirely on the man she eventually married. Which brings us to Section 3, Love, Venison, and Family. In 1767, she marries Rudolf Spangler, a silversmith who is 10 years her senior. And luckily for her, he actually found her quick-witted, argumentative nature totally charming. This comparison perfectly captures their dynamic. Rudolf just loved telling the story of their wedding morning in 1767. For 44 years, he boasted about waking up before dawn to hunt a deer in the woods so they could have fresh meat for their wedding dinner. He thought this was terribly romantic. Dorothea's perspective? Well, she was standing in the church absolutely terrified that her bridegroom was going to arrive covered in mud. They both agreed on one thing, though, for sure. The venison was excellent. Now, the crucial point here is this staggering number, 11. Dorothea and Rudolf had 11 children together. But the truly miraculous part, the thing she thanked God for on her knees countless times, is that every single one of those 11 children lived to adulthood. To put that into perspective, in the 18th century, burying infants was just a tragic, everyday reality for almost every mother she knew. So to have 11 survive, that was an incredibly rare mercy. But let's not romanticize what raising 11 children actually meant. Dorothea is brutally honest with us here. For the better part of 30 years, from well before dawn until long after dark, her life was just a grueling marathon of labor. We're talking cooking, washing, mending clothes, breaking up fights, comforting heartbreak, and nursing fevers. She strips away all that historical gloss and tells us plainly, this was the all-consuming occupation of her adult life. It left very little room for daily romance, that's for sure. Moving to Section 4, War and Private Honors. Right in the middle of this bustling family life, the Revolutionary War in 1776 hits, and Rudolf marches off with the York County men. When Rudolf finally did walk back through that door, Dorothea's reaction was unforgettable. She didn't collapse into cinematic tears or make a grand scene in front of the kids. Instead, she just looked at him and said, "Wash your hands and come to supper." Rudolf told that story for years, thinking she was making a hilarious joke. she admits to us it wasn't a joke at all. It was literally the only sentence she trusted herself to speak without completely falling apart. And this brilliantly illustrates her core philosophy on life. After the war, Rudolph became a really prominent guy, a county treasurer, a state senator, a member of the General Assembly. That meant Dorothea had to sit through endless, tedious public dinners. But she realized something profound through it all. She believed that a good reputation isn't built when everyone is watching you give a speech. True honor is built in those thousand small moments when no one is watching at all, like giving an honest measure of silver in the shop, or just offering a fair price to a struggling neighbor. Let's see how this builds into Rudolph's final act of character. When he died in 1811, his will was absolutely shocking for its time. Instead of following the strict tradition of leaving everything to the eldest son and making his widow dependent on her children, Rudolph left the entire estate in Dorothea's control for the rest of her life. And even more radically, he decreed that after she passed, the estate would be divided completely equally among all their sons and their daughters. This was just a profound act of trust in Dorothea and a massive statement about fairness over tradition. This brings us to Section 5, What an Old Woman Knows. Here we focus on the distilled wisdom she offers her descendants after 23 years of widowhood. So what should we take away from all this? Well, these 4 lessons are honestly just as applicable to our modern lives today as they were in 1834. First, grief doesn't end, but it changes shape. What starts as an open wound eventually becomes a familiar, quiet ache. Second, do the work yourself. Never let someone else speak for your life just because it's easier. Third, if you marry, choose someone whose company genuinely delights you. And finally, fairness matters way more than tradition. Pass on whatever you inherit, whether it's property or just a family story, as fairly as it was given to you. This is such a powerful conclusion to her narrative arc. Despite crossing a terrifying ocean as a child, surviving a war, enduring the crushing labor of raising 11 children, and eventually burying the love of her life, Dorothea reached a place of profound peace. When asked if she considered her life a fortunate one, she answered with a resounding yes. She said she would embrace every single difficult and joyful hour of her 86 years without changing very much at all. Dorothea gave her descendants the truth of her life rather than just a polished surface. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. When the candles burn low for you, when you are the one looking back over the decades, what unvarnished truth, what lessons, and what legacy will you choose to pass on? Thanks so much for learning with us today.